Hello, I'm Ruth Cuthand, and I'd like to thank Threads for inviting me to talk today, and I'd like to thank the Open Door Society. I am an artist. I live in Saskatoon. I am very busy right now with COVID. I beat disease. So I had done a couple of painting beadings, and I kind of liked the whole thing about working with my hands and the color of the beads. And so I was trying to think of a project that I could bead that would be interesting, and sort of like I wanted it to be a new way to for the viewer to think about beads. So I got a bead order from the United States, and it was in February. I remember it so clearly. It was February, the sun was shining through the window. I was laying out the hanks of beads on the floor, and I was looking at them. The sun was hitting them. They were shining. The color was so deep and pure. And I started thinking about when Indigenous women first saw beads. And I thought, they must have been like really excited about the colors and the shine. And then so I was thinking, well, that came with trade. And I was thinking about, the good things that came with trade, like the iron pots. So there was food safety, about knives. So, it was easier to butcher your meat and cut it up. And then I started thinking of the downside, like guns. And then I started thinking about disease and the decimation of Indigenous populations. And I have often heard about, these diseases from the old world coming to the new world. And I thought, I've never really looked and seen which diseases those were. So I looked them up, and I saw that they're like chickenpox, measles, which are basically what we think of as childhood diseases. And those actually killed Indigenous people. So then I started to look them up on the microscopic level. And I Googled these images, and these beautiful images came up of disease. And what happens when you're looking through a microscope at that level, everything's like shades of gray, right? So what happens are these lovely people called medical artists. They actually paint the image, and sometimes they'll do it so, where different parts of the virus, they'll paint different colors, or they'll just paint them whatever color they want. And so I saw these beautiful abstracted images, and I thought, oh wow, they would just be so great in beads. And so that's actually how I got into beading diseases. So the first series was called the Trading Series, which was about contact. And then the second series, called Reserving, I was looking at diseases and I took from my, when Little Pine signed treaty, which was 1870, I think it was like 8 when he signed. And so that was like the start date of the Reserving Series, which goes up to the discovery of HIV. And what I was looking at in there were mostly diseases around inadequate housing, poor nutrition, those kind of issues, poverty. And so a lot of them are respiratory, like tuberculosis, smallpox. Smallpox kind of goes through the thread. Tuberculosis also keeps moving along. Then the last series is called Surviving, and it's from the discovery of HIV forward. And so I've done H1N1. Yeah, so I have been very busy with COVID. I've been doing their 8-inch circular images of COVID. And I did 4 of them, and each one of those sold. And then I did a series of 8 masks, and they're like the disposable ones that kind of come out, and they have an image on each side of COVID. And those, I think there's only 3 left of those. And it's just been crazy. Everything's just been selling like hotcakes. So, I think for newcomers, it's really important that they learn about Indigenous people and learn how that we were colonized, like I would say most of them are, and we need to learn about colonization and decolonization. So I really want newcomers to understand that we are we're nothing to be afraid of. And unfortunately, I want newcomers of color to understand that the racism in Canada is pretty terrible. And I especially felt for the woman that I was working with, because she comes from a society that is largely black. And then she comes here, and then there's all this racism that I think a lot of newcomers aren't prepared for, because they drink the Kool-Aid that says Canada is wonderful and everybody's friendly. And it is if you're white, but if you're not, if you're a person of color, it's not that easy. And I feel like I grew up with it. So as a child, I learned very early what it was and what was going on. And I think as a newcomer, if you come as an adult and you've never experienced it, it must